I think I've come to the conclusion, and I have somewhat that view of the world, that I don't think government solves this problem after the fact by any stretch of the imagination. I do think education's a big piece of this, and I have come around to the point that if we can, if kids aren't getting educated at home, and unfortunately, John, they're not, we got to do what we can to make up for that deficit, and if that we can help in early education programs. I know that's a little troubling to you.
It's hard because
it's very troubling.
We're conservatives. We want kids to learn how to read.
But gosh darn it, their parents have screwed up. They haven't taken responsibility if there's a parent around. And if the kid doesn't get to read, you're going to pay for it big time. And I'd rather have him learn how to read and avoid prison than paying for the prison cell. But with these guys coming out of prison, we got to get serious about what programs work and don't work. We have flushed an incredible amount of money down the drain on programs that really don't work. And frankly, interestingly enough, some of the most, the ones that do mentoring type programs, parental substitutes, if you will, are the least expensive.
Right.
Really?
Absolutely.
All right. So you're telling me, as a hardcore fiscal conservative, I should be warm and fuzzy and help people get a big brother or a big sister.
Absolutely, because it'll save you money in the long run. And I know this doesn't appeal to you, but it's the right thing to do.
I have no interest in the right thing to do. I'm a conservative. What did you get about that?
But you can do this. You can be, as a conservative, you ought to be a big brother or big sister. It's not a government program.
Can you imagine me as a big brother? You call that a beer bong? Let me show you how you do that. I mean, that's not going to help anybody.
That's a bad example. I'm sorry I brought that up.
Bad example. All right. The time we have left, let's also talk about where we go from here. You had a bill, and it changed. This was a sentencing reform bill, and it seems as though I'm hearing a lot of the same stuff from a hardcore conservative and a liberal here. I don't like that, because I know that's when
we'll try to change it here.
When frogs start dropping from the sky pretty soon. So what is the source of the difference between the two? What is the issue that's keeping consensus from happening?
And we'll see Friday the answer to that question. I mean, this is difficult. And I wouldn't say that I'm a liberal, but okay. As a Democrat,
pansy-ass communist works too. That's
yeah, or Democrat, but I'm a pretty conservative Democrat. I mean, I spent years in the police service myself. So I think the trick really is that, from a conservative perspective, show me shorter sentences are going to work. And the reality is, right now, we don't have the data. The data shows that longer sentences don't work. But what are shorter sentences going to do? I mean, that's going to be a bit of a leap of faith. And the other trick is, in the budget constraints that we're in right now, I think the Attorney General has made an outstanding point, and that is, we need to figure out what works and what doesn't. Well, that means you spend money on program evaluation. And that's bureaucracy, if you will. That's not on-the-street services, which we want to do at this point. And under the budget constraints, it's going to be even harder.
Senator says that longer sentences don't necessarily work. Is that true?
It may not work in terms of rehabilitation. I don't look at prisons for rehabilitation. I look at them for isolation. John, three things are going to come out of this committee, whether they're going to pass the legislation or not. I think we're going to have a proposal for a totally new sentencing grid on drugs, and I think that's appropriate.
When you say grid, you dealt this and you have this many crimes.
We're going to take them out of the grid for all the rest of the crimes. We're going to create a whole separate sentencing structure for drugs, and basically acknowledge the reality that I'm talking about, that no first-time drug offenders go to prison anyway, so why should we even pretend like it and say you're not eligible for prison?
So right now, to change the law to better reflect reality.
That's exactly right.
If you're a first-time pot user, you're not going to go to jail.
Absolutely.
If you're a 20th time meth user, you are going to go to jail. You are.
And I think we're going to see, I think, quite a bit of support for that. I think maybe the DAs are on board. The more controversial one, the committee I'm on, is, right now we've got a lot of minimum mandatory sentences, and they're set at what's called the midpoint of the presumptive range. So you commit second-degree murder, and the range is 8 to 48, you've got to get 24. If that's the midpoint, actually not quite.
Tight on time, so point being.
We're going to lower. There's a proposal that I'm in favor of to give the judges more discretion, but not complete discretion, in these violent crimes. The DAs appear to be opposed to that, and I think that's going to be a big point of contention.
Okay, but you're seeing a lot of stuff where Democrats and Republicans, liberals and conservatives are coming together and admitting, one, this is a serious issue. We can no longer afford to do what we've been doing. What do you think is going to fall out of it?
And I agree with the Attorney General. I think those things will fall out, but I also think we're going to have a budget crisis this year. That really, what I've said to the CCJJ is we've got to come up with something here, because if we don't, we're going to lose control of this, and the legislature is going to do just like it did in 1985 and take sentences and cut them in half instead of doubling them just across the board.
Because
so
that's
let's
politically expedient, and we got to do something.
Well, we've got a $1.3 billion hole to plug in a $7.5 billion budget. You know, so we've got to do something.
You understand this kind of nice cooperation between left and right gives me hives. So you understand.
Makes me nervous too.
I can understand. All right, got a couple minutes left. Let me dance on something that people don't want to talk about. But if we're having this much trouble with drugs, is it time to start talking about legalization of certain drugs? And California now is looking at legalizing pot for a couple reasons. One, the costs for enforcement go down, but also the tax revenue goes up. Are we getting to the point where we can actually have an adult conversation about this, or is this still something we can't look at?
I think politically it's still persona non grata. Again, we'll see. The next session or two, I think, are going to be fascinating, because the whole world has shifted and changed thanks to the economy. So I think we're closer to that conversation than we've ever been, but I'm not sure we're there yet, although I'll be fascinated.
Why not? What's keeping us from your point of view? I mean, as a politician, if I were in your shoes, even if I believe in legalization for pot, and that's it. But if I were in your shoes, I wouldn't say that, because I would win nothing for that. I wouldn't,
Win nothing for doing nothing?
No, I would win nothing for bringing up the issue. It's not like
right.
I wouldn't get it's not like, well, the pot guys are on my team. That's not going to help me win.
I don't know. They may all own a medical marijuana dispensary.
That's true.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's legal pot.
Yeah. In fact, they may be opposed to because they're making so much money with medicinal pot. I think it is. I'm ready for a adult conversation about it, and I happen to be a opponent of legalization. Right. But what's happened here? We had a vote on statewide legalization. It went down 60-40.
Right.
Went down 60-40. Now we're going to see almost a virtual backdoor with this highly abused medicinal marijuana situation, where half the patients are going to be college kids who are 22.
Listen,
and
baldness
maybe
causes pain. Pain will get me my medical marijuana card.
It probably will. Trust me, that's all you have to say to some of the doctors.
Trust me, and this baldness has caused me a lot of pain.
So I'm wondering, maybe this will cause some more circumspection about legalization across the board of pot. My concern about it, and if you look at where they've had liberalized marijuana laws, the teenage use, earlier use, increases dramatically, and that has serious cost impact for you later on.
Although when you look at booze, we do such a good job. Kids can get pot, they can't get booze. All right, we got a minute left. And you're right. I think the budget problem allows us to talk about things that during good times we'd never talk about, including sentencing reform. We're forced to look at it. The downside is we're going to be in panic mode, and therefore we might not make good, rational decisions. What would it take for us to have a conversation on decriminalization of drugs? It seems like that seems to be at the heart of all this.
We'll see. I think it'll be lower on the priority list of how do we change the way government functions in Colorado given this budget crisis. We are going to have to rethink that from top to bottom. I mean, this $1.3 billion is huge. I mean, it's the equivalent of closing 1 or 2 out of 5 public schools throughout the state, which we can't do, but so it's going to mean we're going to have a whole conversation about everything. Senator, appreciate it. AG, John, I'm John. John's out there. Look for me late night on 850 KOA. Go to our website, independenceinstitute.org. We'll see you next week. You jab a jab, bamboozle, nuka noozle, bippity bop she-call. You jab a jab, bamboozle, nuka noozle, bippity bop she-call. I mean, you keep on talking, but you don't know where to turn it off.